Can the cracked steering gear piston be repaired? If it had been replaced with a new one in China, in Pakistan, it only needs to weld a steel plate to completely repair the piston and use it again. Today, the steering gear in front of us cannot rotate because the input shaft cannot rotate, which affects the normal steering of the truck. In order to check the internal damage, the end cover of the rocker shaft must be disassembled first. The main purpose is to completely drain the gear oil. The bottom ruler piston can be disassembled. After a careful inspection, it was found that the ruler teeth on the piston had broken and 2 fragments were found in the steering gear. Although this piston looks scrap, it can be completely repaired in Pakistan for 5,000 rupees. In order to facilitate lathe processing of the piston, the guide tube clamp on the piston needs to be further removed. In this case, when the internal bare rod is rotated, the steel ball and the bare rod in the plug can be completely separated. Direct welding is definitely not possible in this case. It is assumed that a piece of steel plate is used to restore it. After simply recording the original length with a caliper, the piston with very high hardness can be completely separated. First, the piston fracture surface is heated with the help of a sheep ant ring. The piston fracture surface is annealed at high temperature to reduce the overall hardness of the piston and the difficulty of lathe cutting. When the temperature of the piston end surface is qualified, the outer diameter can be cut. The inner point of the fracture surface is the cutting reference. The piston is continuously cut and cut. Only a certain thickness needs to be retained. The fracture surface needs to be completely cut off. The prepared steel plate is spliced. As the piston fracture surface is qualified, the thickness of the cutting needs to be compensated for the steel plate. The steel plate shaft core needs to be punched according to the piston outer diameter just processed. In this way, the two can be docked. After the shaft core hole is continuously expanded, in order to be able to dock with the piston tightly, the steel plate aperture needs to be cut and expanded again by the inner hole cutter until the aperture meets the requirements of splicing. Then the piston is measured again with an outer diameter micrometer and the data is compared with a caliper. Careful measurement can prevent the gap from being too large. After confirmation, the sleeves on the side are cut and removed to avoid affecting the normal movement of the rack piston. In order to smoothly build the piston, first use engine oil to lubricate the contact surface. To avoid the hydraulic press's downward pressure from cracking the steel plate, after the piston and the steel plate are integrated, the steel plate needs to be completely fixed and not loose. The gaps at the joints must be fully welded with welding rods to avoid the steel plate from falling off during rotation. The gaps need to be fully welded with welding rods to avoid the gaps from affecting the restoration of the teeth. When the master continues to cut the steel plate, he can also process the raised weld scars at the same time. To avoid the outer diameters of the two being inconsistent, when the thickness of the steel plate exceeds the length of the piston, all the remaining scraps must be removed. The spliced piston is restored to the original data. The third ruler needs to be polished and compounded. To prevent the thickness of the steel plate from exceeding the length of the piston, all the remaining scraps must be removed. The rocker arm shaft will also hit the stop. The master also needs to use yellow mud to create a mold to completely seal both sides. The tooth spacing on the piston surface is the space for injection molding glue. After the shaping is completed, the aluminum block is heated with a toothbrush. The molten aluminum water can be completely glued to the teeth to achieve the purpose of replicating the toothbrush. After the toothbrush is kept at a constant temperature for 10 minutes, the hardened aluminum block can be demolded. This is the reference mold for the toothbrush. Then the curved surface of the steel plate is polished into a flat surface. When the two are consistent, it can be cut by the saw blade of the angle die machine. The broken third ruler can be restored to the factory setting. Then the toothbrush mold is used for comparison. There is no gap between the teeth. Then this steering machine with a broken rack piston can continue to be used. What do you think of the repaired steering machine?